In taking the listening section of the TOEFL IBT, the listening comprehension section, before we really get into the process and the methodology, one of the things that we like to really explain to students to help them with knowing how to do well is to explain the process of ETS's process of how they make a listening question and get a listening answer. Because once you understand the process of how they make listening questions and answers, you'll understand exactly how to do well on the test. Our methodology that we teach, our methodology that we explain for doing well on listening comprehension is based on exactly how ETS develops its questions and answers for the listening comprehension. If you have knowledge of how they develop questions and answers for listening comprehension, you will know exactly what to do on the listening section of the test on the actual TOEFL IBT. Our methods are built around this knowledge. So that's why there's such clarity for our students when they take our course. There's such clarity for our students when they take our course because they have this particular knowledge. As you know, we teach a TOEFL IBT online course, and our online course is a wonderful course that covers all 4 areas of the exam. It's through the Udemy website, which is the best online teaching website, www.udemy.com. And you will be able to find our course on there by typing in TOEFL. But at any rate, and also the link is below. You can read the link also for going to our course. But we hope that you will listen to this presentation on how ETS makes listening comprehension questions so that you can better understand our methodology and know how to do a great job. All right, so any true expert, anybody that calls themselves an expert, will be able to explain to you the process of how they create questions and answers. Because however they're teaching you, it should be based upon that. And that's what we do in our TOEFL IBT online course. When you understand the process, like I said, you'll truly know how to do really well. You must become aware of the process of creating questions for this section and the process of creating answers for this section. That's an awareness you want to have, because when you know what the test maker knows, you get more comfortable. You get more relaxed. And when you're comfortable and relaxed, you do better. All right? If I walked up to you and I told you, I said, hey, this is how I'm going to make the questions to the test. This is where I'm going to get the questions from the test. This is how I'm going to get the answers for the test. You will feel much more comfortable, much more relaxed, because you'll know exactly how to prepare to do well. Now, no teacher ever tells you that or gives you that information, but essentially that's what I'm doing. I'm giving you this essential information. You want to be a copycat. Once you discover how they make questions and answers, you want to copy their process. And you copy that, and we teach you within our TOEFL IBT online course, we teach you exactly how to copy their process so that you can find the questions and answers every single time. Every single time you can find the questions and answers. Who makes the questions? We know that ETS hires different people they have in-house and out-house to make up the listening comprehension passages and the questions and the answers. Sometimes they're supplied with the passages and they make the questions and answers. But they have a team of people that does this design. And ETS is very strict in their development. Everybody has to do the same thing. A teacher can't use their own method or their own style. They have to use the ETS methodology of making questions, answers, and passages. That's why being able to use our process and our methodology works so well, because it's built around the consistency that ETS demands its designers, test designers do when they're creating passages, questions, and answers. The first step of the process is, of course, conversation and lecture script creation. We're not going to explain this in a lot of depth. Basically, they get their designers to create a conversation or a lecture. They choose a subject matter, and then they create a lecture that lasts about 5 to 7 minutes, and they try to make it as much as possible like a university lecture. And so what they do a lot of times is they add in transitions and signposting to show when somebody's moving from one passage to the next, or they put in questions from students, digressions, repeats, self-correction, hesitation. They do all the things within a lecture to be able to indicate to a student that something important is being said. So they add that stuff into a lecture when they actually design it. And for conversations, they do the exact same thing in terms of being able to indicate to somebody when something's important. Within the course itself, we teach you within our course how to recognize this kind of important information so that you know what to write down in your notes, because this is exactly how they design the conversations and the lectures. Like I said, we're not going to go into it very deeply, but just so you can have a little bit of information about that. Lecture topics can cover many things. They can cover arts, all these different arts they can cover. They can cover a lot of physical sciences in terms of all these different physical sciences, social science, life science. So you have a wide range of topics that are covered on the listening for lectures at least. For conversations in terms of topics is usually having something to do with a class subject, or something of that nature, then with a student-professor relationship or a student in the registrar's office, or something dealing with a university subject matter. But they pick a subject matter and they design a lecture or conversation based upon it. Moving on to the questions. Once the designer has the conversation or lecture, they listen to it and they take organized notes, most likely using the outline method for taking notes. The designer most of the time will listen to the conversation or lecture 2 or 3 times to make sure that they have the essential notes that a student will take from a passage. Alright? They design their notes, they take notes from the lecture in an organized manner. It's really important you understand that. That's the reason why one of the things that we really teach in our TOEFL IBT online course is we have a whole dedicated section on note-taking. How to take notes, how to recognize important information. What are you supposed to do to recognize important information? This is something we explain to you in great detail, because for listening, it's the most important thing you can do is note take, because that's exactly what they use when they make questions and answers. They use notes that they take from a conversation or lecture. So you have to be able to do the same thing that the test designer does. Okay, so they make up these organized notes. And now that they have the essential notes, they can very easily make questions and answers for a listening passage very easily. All right, what they're going to do is they're going to create a question and answer from one section of the notes from the conversation or lecture. They don't create a question from more than one section of the notes. They create the question and answer from one section of the notes. That's why having organized notes is so critical and so important. Only the main idea purpose question is based upon more than one section of the notes from a conversation. The knowledge of the designer creating a question and answer from one section of the notes is critically important. It explains why note-taking is so important to achieving an excellent score. So to better understand, we'll give you an example of what ETS notes from a lecture and conversation look like. This is what notes from a lecture looks like, and what they're going to do is they're going to pick a question and an answer from that one section. We see question 7, and then they're going to move to another section of the notes, and they're going to pick question 8 and the answer for question 8 from that particular section. So we teach you how to take notes this way within the course itself. But having very well organized notes is extremely helpful. Extremely, extremely helpful to doing exactly how they pick their questions and answers. For a conversation, it's the same process. This is what their note-taking looks like. And they pull the question number 2 and the answer source from that one section. and they pull the question number 3 and the answer source from just that section. The reason why you know this is their process is because everything is chronological in listening. All the notes go in chronological, all the questions go in chronological order of the notes. And so if you have your notes organized, you can find the question subject matter very easily. This is what most notes look like. Sometimes they change it a little bit. Their notes at ETS probably has more information because they have to ensure they're absolutely correct in their question and answer design. The benefit of knowing this information is critical. All right, if you can take notes the same way they take notes, you can know exactly where the question and the answer is because I've just told you where they pull the question from, where they pull the answer from. So we hope that this has been very helpful for you, and we look forward to continuing this journey on our TOEFL IBT online course. Thank you very much. We think that one of the biggest benefits that students can have in regards to taking our course, our TOEFL IBT online course, is being able to discover how to think like the TOEFL IBT exam creators. When you truly are trying to figure out how to answer questions or how to best proceed with the process of answering questions, it's very helpful to understand how do they make a reading passage question and answer. What is the process like? And so that's what we're trying to explain to you in this PowerPoint presentation is what is the process? How does the process work? How do you think like the exam creator? Because if you can discover how they make the questions and get the answers, then that better helps you in terms of doing this, in terms of doing well in the exam. As you know, we have the one of the best TOEFL IBT online preparation courses. If you go to the website www.udemy, that's udemy.com, and put in TOEFL, you'll see all of our courses there available that we teach and that we have to offer. So when we're talking about reading comprehension questions, like I said, if somebody's a true expert in teaching or explaining how to do a TOEFL IBT, one of the first things that you want them to do is be able to explain to you how they make questions, how they design questions, because then you know that person has really put a lot of thought process into their methodology for your answering questions. There's no way someone can tell you how to answer questions for the TOEFL IBT and they haven't actually discovered the ETS process. So that's what I'm going to go over here with you. The reason why this is so helpful, like I give an example here, if I come up to you and I tell you exactly, I say, hey, this is how I'm going to make the questions for the test you're taking next week, and this is how I'm getting the answer to the test questions. You'll feel really good because you'll know, hey, I know where he's getting the questions from, and I know how he's getting the answers. You're going to do excellent on that kind of test. And so that's what I'm trying to explain to you is in that regard in terms of how this happens. You want to be a copycat. And what I mean by that is once you get this explanation I'm about to explain to you in terms of how ETS makes reading comprehension questions and gets answers, copy the process. Do the exact same thing they do to get the questions and answers. You're going to make it easy, okay? Because remember, as I'm going to be teaching you, reading comprehension is not about the subject matter. They have very strange subject matters, right? Very out of the way subject matters. Something about Chinese pottery, or about lions in Europe, ancient lions in Europe, or archaeology, and just strange topics. But the subject matter doesn't matter if you really understand simply how they make questions and how they get answers. Well, first of all, it's helpful to understand who makes the questions. ETS hires several different English professionals, and these people are hired to make reading passages and to create the questions and answers based on those reading passages. Sometimes they're supplied with the reading passages themselves, and they just have to make questions and answers. Sometimes they can create the reading passage and the questions and answers also. So it can be a mixture of both of those things. Here's the secret formula that happens. All right, a reading passage test maker creates a reading passage, and then afterwards they commence to their question design. All right, basically what they do is they look in the paragraph, and they look in the paragraph, maybe paragraph 2, and they pick one sentence from that paragraph to design their question. One sentence to design a question. Okay, from a base for the basic question. When you're talking about your detail, purpose, inference, attitude questions, all those questions, vocabulary questions, reference questions, all those questions are based on one sentence. Okay, they're based on one particular sentence, and so you have to be able. Also, even with a negative factual question, the question usually leads off from one sentence from the keywords in the question. But at any rate, that's very important to understand. They're not looking at a whole paragraph to make a question. They're looking at one sentence in a paragraph to make a question. That's why we advise students about not reading entire paragraphs. Only read and find your keyword sentence, because you're doing the same thing that the people are doing for the test creation. So that process is very, very important to understand. After they have their one sentence, then they're going to create a question based on this one sentence using similar language. All right. Most likely they're going to use synonym language to create the actual question itself. Sometimes they'll use the same language that's in the actual passage itself. Sometimes they'll use synonym language. It depends, but it's both. But that's how that sentence is where they're going to design the question from. Okay? And after that, they proceed to select an answer. The answer is either going to come directly from the keyword sentence, or it's going to come from the next sentence. If the next sentence starts off with that kind of magical language, this means, that means, those, such as, a result, so forth and so on. When you see that language after the keyword sentence, that's where the answer actually is. Because this is the way this is where they make answers. This is where they get answers from for the TOEFL questions. It's going to come from that keyword sentence that they make the question from, or the next sentence, depending on if that next sentence has connecting language. All right. The passage creator will do their best to use synonym language when writing the answer choice. All right, and then when they pick bad answer choices, they pick them from the surrounding sentences. The two sentences may be above the keyword sentence, and maybe the sentence below the keyword sentence. Or sometimes they'll pick an answer that's from a different paragraph. But at any rate, this explains understanding this process understanding their process of how they make questions and develop answers is going to help you in terms of understanding our tricks and tips that we teach you for answering reading comprehension questions correctly. Our methodology is designed. Our methodology that we teach you is designed right around the same process that ETS uses to create the actual questions. So you have a lot of coherence between our methodology and their question answer process. When the test creator is going to make a bad answer, they use a lot of exact language because they know exact language is something that attracts students, and they have to make the trap questions look very good. They look like that big piece of cake that you can't have. All right. For the negative factual questions, the same basic principle. They select a sentence that leads into the actual categories themselves. But then they're going to either look at different sentences within a paragraph and select one of the answer choices for a negative factual question. So sometimes a negative factual question is the one question where it's built off of different sentences within a paragraph. Some of the other questions, the paraphrase question, that's also a one sentence question. It usually was going to have a comma or a semicolon present within it, so it's a little bit longer of a sentence, but it's essentially still one sentence, in terms of what that question is based off of. Vocabulary questions are one-sentence questions. And the summary questions, the way they're designed is a little bit different. You know, when somebody's designing a summary question,